In this video, I'm going to be talking about golden eagles and how they were kept and utilized in ancient pueblos and great houses in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. This is a subject that is rarely discussed even in the archaeological literature, even though the remains of hundreds of golden eagles have been found at Chacoan great houses. Join me as we dive into this fascinating and little discussed subject. Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here. In this video we are going to be talking about eagles, specifically golden eagles, and specifically golden eagles that were kept anciently by the people of Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. So we need to give a little bit of background for this, but I want you to understand, why am I talking about this subject? Well, in addition to having a vast depth of research on this particular subject, I have personally trained eagles for years. I have trained a number of golden eagles and bald eagles. I've trained them for falconry, I've trained them for wildlife education, and I've done wildlife rehabilitation work. So I have a unique insight into the care and morphology and molt patterns of golden eagles, and it's going to play into this video. I'm going to bring some perspectives that you might not be able to get anywhere else, and that's why I wanted to make this video, because part of this subject, eagles at Chaco Canyon, never gets brought up at all, and certainly not in the context of somebody who has worked directly with eagles. So let's back up a little bit here. What is Chaco Canyon? Well, we got to back up a little bit further. Anciently, the peoples of the American Southwest, the Four Corners regions, which is kind of, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, were living more of a hunter-gatherer kind of life. You hunt animals and you gather plants, and this is how you live. This is just a cut and dry way to live, and it makes you very mobile. But around 300 BC, we see a shift in that American Southwest region and northwestern Mexico to move to be more agrarian. People before then were more living in pit houses, and around 300 BC, there started to be a switch with the domestication of a plant called teosinte. Now, teosinte grows in Mexico. It was domesticated by ancient peoples there into corn. So all the corn we have today all originated in central Mexico. It's come out now and it's spread. And corn kernels dried out are easy to trade and ship. And it's like, hey, we're going to trade these goods. Hey, you plant them, they grow. You get an ear of corn. You can dry that corn out, and just whenever you need it, take it off the kernel. And a lot of the ruins I've been to still have dried corn cobs left over, because you just take off those corn kernels and you grind them up and you have cornmeal instantly. You can make you'll make like a tortilla. You have options. So it's a very versatile food. It's very easy to store in a desert environment, and it's very easy to grow. It's a water intense plant. But if you are doing this, this requires crop management. And if you are managing crops instead of gathering wild plants, then you kind of got to put down roots. And if you're going to put down roots, you can make your habitation a bit more permanent. So the people that we currently call the ancestral Puebloan people, which is kind of a catch-all for a bunch of different peoples, began around 300 BC making pueblos. Now, some of these early pueblos were they were made out of adobe and rock stacked, and they made these beautiful dwellings. They started to make them multiple stories. And then eventually they started to also make these in cliff dwellings that were kind of built in little alcoves of the cliffs. Now, some people will say those were for defensive reasons. Other people say, well, during drier times, the back of these cliffs had seeps that would bring water right to the people directly. So it was a water-related reason. And that's a discussion for a different time. These ancestral Puebloan people, generally, we classify this time period as about 300 BC to about 1600 AD. That's kind of the time. Well, within this time period, you have the Chaco explosion. The Chaco Canyon kind of thriving period, instead of 300 BC to 1600 AD, is really only 900 AD to about 1150 AD. It's a much smaller time period. Now, people have lived in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, all the way back to the Ice Age. We have, and the Archaic periods, we have ancient peoples using the area. But in this brief window, you have this explosion with masonry. We have incredible architecture, multiple stories tall. We have great houses capable of housing, hundreds of people. Now, there's big debates on how many people actually lived in Chaco Canyon. There's people who think not many people lived there, and these were just ceremony centers that during certain feasts and ceremonies people would come in. And other people say, no, there were thousands and thousands of people living in Chaco Canyon. We don't know for sure, and this is hotly debated to this day. But we do know that trade happened. And that's the big buzz. Everybody gets really excited because we have definitively proven that from Mexico in Chaco Canyon, very, very precious trade items were brought up, such as shells from the ocean, and they were made into beautiful beads and bracelets and all kinds of things. Copper bells, and very precious cacao beans. And there were, cacao, which you make chocolate out of, but they made a chocolate drink, and there were very special either elitist mugs or maybe ritual mugs that we have tested the residue and proven it has theobromine in it, which is chocolate. So we know they were bringing up chocolate from probably the Puerto Vallarta region. So that's pretty neat. But the big item everybody loves to talk about, including me, is macaws, specifically scarlet macaws. Now, scarlet macaws are big, bright, beautiful birds. They were brought up from Mexico. Also, military macaws were to a lesser degree brought up, and the thick-billed parrot was also brought up. But the one that people were really excited about were scarlet macaws. I am going to do a mega video just on scarlet macaws. That I want something that really can stand the test of time online, that anybody can access and get the full scope of macaws. I have raised tons of macaws and tons of eagles. So I'll be giving some very interesting insight to macaw upkeep and dispelling a lot of myths that a lot of people have about the macaws that were kept at Chaco Canyon. But we know they are very special. But here's the thing. At these Chaco great houses with these multiple stories and the capacity to hold, hundreds or even thousands of people in some of these great houses, it's interesting, as some of these have been excavated, in addition to macaws, we find eagles. So, for example, the most famous great house at Chaco Canyon is Pueblo Bonito. At Pueblo Bonito, 32 macaws were found. So that's interesting, the skeletons of 32 macaws. And I'm not going to get into that here, but worth noting, 265 turkeys. Now, we do know that modern meaning like historic times, like black and white photography era, we know that turkeys, one of the ways they were kept is that one would put like a jess around a leg, stake them down, and they were just kind of free to go within that range, and you'd go by and put some corn kernels down, give them some little scraps to eat, and so they couldn't wander off that way. So that's kind of an interesting way for them to live. We do know at some sites, we know at Paquime in Mexico, and also at some of the ruins throughout the southwestern United States, we do have found turkey pens, where turkeys were kept in pens with, kind of some willow branches covering up the front of them, and we have a buildup of fecal matter, of your droppings from turkeys in these. Now, we today just think of turkeys as food. I'm getting to the eagles in a second, but I got to build up. You need to have a greater appreciation for turkeys. Turkeys are big, they are powerful, and they're beautiful. Their feathers are gorgeous. The tail feathers are amazing. The wing feathers not only are amazing, but they are the best feather in the world for fletching arrows. To this day, if you use arrows with a plastic fletching, fine. But if you use arrows today, you can still buy turkey feathers from the wing feathers to be used for fletching arrows. Or a weapon they also had was the atlatl. So you're going to fletch your atlatl dart, you're going to want to use turkey feathers as well. But there's one more thing. We know that these ancient peoples at Chaco were trading back and forth with Mexico. So you had influences from, the people who rising up, like Mayan and Aztec and Zapotec and some of these different peoples of central Mexico and of tropical Mexico. Tropical to be able to get cacao beans and to get live macaws to ship up. We know those cultures, we know for a fact from writing, because those cultures had some written language. We know for a fact that turkeys were considered very powerful, very totemic, very strong and manly. We have many of the greatest warriors named, many of the greatest kings, and many of the greatest ball players, because the Mayan ball game was a huge thing. It's like, raw, I'm a great ball player. Even in their scriptures, the Popol Vuh, the hero twins, that's part of their big thing, is they're great ball players and world renowned for it. These people often had turkey in their name. So you're like, there was this great warrior, red turkey. And today we're like, turkey? Like gobble, 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 the thing we eat on Thanksgiving. But turkeys are powerful, and we know, at least in Mexico and in Guatemala, in Central America, we know that the turkey was a powerful symbol, not thought of like, oh, dumb as a turkey. And so knowing that could be interesting to think that at Pueblo Bonito, at those ruins, the fact that there were 265 turkey remains found could have just been eaten, but they also could have been kept for other reasons, from just having them around, like, hey, well, this is a ritualistic animal, we want them here for the powerful medicine they bring, to sacrificing them, or just for food, or all of the above. We don't know completely, but we can kind of make inferences. But there were 366 eagles. 366 eagles. Now, at another site, another great house up on the hill above Pueblo Bonito is Pueblo Alto. Now, Pueblo Alto had 67 eagles, the remains of 67 eagles found there, and 689 turkeys. So there are many great houses in Chaco Canyon that are entirely unexcavated. So who knows what other numbers could be inferred. But the fact that, in a couple 100-year span of kind of the thriving of Pueblo Bonito, the fact that you have 366 eagles, it's pretty remarkable. What were they doing there? Were they killed? Were they eaten? Were they kept alive? What were they used for? Well, I want to bring some interesting perspectives, both from ancient times and from the modern day times as well. So, first of all, what can we infer from peoples today? There are many tribes that do still live in pueblos, and that recently did, and maybe have moved away from that. And we have in the early 1900s black and white photos and records of anthropologists going to meet some of these modern tribes and to learn all they could directly from these people. And one of the things they found is that many of these tribes in historic times would regularly keep eagles. Now, these eagles were usually taken as a baby from a nest. Sometimes they were trapped, but usually they were taken as a baby from a nest. And maybe you would have some sort of jesses on the ankles, and they might be kept in pens, but usually they were kind of kept on the top of the pueblo. It's like, hey, you're overlooking all of us. That could be viewed as a good omen, as a blessing of the people. We do know that in some, not all, but some of these tribes, these eagles were sacrificed. They were raised to a certain age and they were sacrificed. It seems in some tribes they weren't viewed as much more than, we're going to sacrifice them and have them be, we just need the feathers. And it's an offering. It's a very sacred ritual offering. But in some, the sacrifice was very important. And in some tribes, they would get a baby, raise it to a certain age, and then let it learn how to fly and hunt and go do its thing on its own. But this is basically modern tribes into historic times, into the era of black and white photography. That gives us a window into perhaps what was happening at Chaco Canyon, but we do not know for sure. We know many of the ideas and cultural offshoots that happened at Chaco were different from anything before or after in the region. But we do know that they had hundreds of eagles at the sites that have been excavated. So let's talk about this as far as what it means. Cultures change, and Native American cultures are incredibly fluid. I've seen this in my own life. I've seen how there is an understanding of kind of primordial time, which is, it's not like when was the date that this happened. No, it's like whatever is now is an eternal now. So whatever the tradition we have, that's always been our tradition because it's in the present. I've seen this. I've seen this at powwows. I've seen this with tribal members I've talked to. And so even though a tradition can change, it's viewed as having always been as such. So we have to view everything. We need to understand directly from the tribes that are the ancestors of these people, but we also have to understand from the archaeological evidence, and we also have to understand things like climate. We know for a fact that there were huge climatic changes. There was a little ice age that made Europe, icy and cold for, a couple hundred years, and here in the Americas you had these huge droughts and you had people in mass having to leave a lot of these pueblo areas and amalgamate with other tribes. And so today DNA work that is going on has shown that a lot of these modern tribes have different ancestry from different areas, and different people would move, and part of these people, maybe most of these people died off, and then who was left became part of this tribe. So this was going on, and you had mass migrations that were happening in different regions. So a lot of times the people who are here now weren't here 1,000 years ago. They might have been, one state over, and now they're here. And so DNA work and climate science, all these things are factors in trying to put this together. So we want all the pieces of the puzzle together to understand the best we can. But let's get back to the eagles and see how that shifts a little. Now, we know eagles are sacred to virtually all Native American tribes, and just about everywhere in the world. If there's an eagle in the area, it is viewed as at least totemic and symbolic, if not sacred. How many countries of the world have a statue of an eagle on top of their flagpole as a way to be like, hey, this is our country. It's like we're being watched over by the power, the grace, the dignity of the eagle. There's an association that we see all over the world, and we see that both anciently and in modern times with Native peoples. Now, what we see, one of the interesting things that we see is today there are many eagle dancers. And you go to powwows, you go to any sort of a presentation, and a lot of Native Americans will wear eagle feathers. It's very meaningful, and they can tell you specifically what it means to them. There are many eagle dancers that will wear either fake versions or real eagle feathers and replicate the eagle wings. Now, one of the things we have seen in the past 100 years is a proliferation of bald eagle heads on eagle dancers. Now, the interesting thing about that is bald eagles do not live typically in the regions where ancestral Puebloan peoples have lived. But what we see is after the 1900s, once they hit the early 1900s, all across America, there was a big reason to push, especially after World War II, to push national pride in the United States of America. The national bird of the United States is the bald eagle. Bald eagles are fish hunters. They want to live usually in cooler environments, ideally, usually kind of near pine forests, and they want to hunt. They only hunt fish. I mean, basically that's all the thing they hunt. They'll scavenge as well, but they're fish hunters. That's what they are built to do. There aren't a lot of big bodies of water that allow for that in a lot of these arid Four Corners regions. You don't see that much. But because of that sense of national pride, the bald eagle, in the minds of many people, when you say eagle, most people picture a bald eagle anywhere. I mean, in terms of in Native American culture, in any popular culture, anywhere. If you just say eagle, most people are going to picture a bald eagle today. And so we see that as well with some of the dance regalia and ceremonial wear of modern tribes. What we see, we also see the use of golden eagles. And with the historical photos, if you look back at the historical photos of dancers in the like 1910, 1920, photographers visiting these pueblos, everything was golden eagle, 100% golden eagle. And at these ruins, at Chaco Canyon, all the eagles uncovered there are 100% golden eagles. Golden eagles are the supreme eagle. They are the most widespread eagle in the world. They've conquered just about everywhere. They're just so adaptable and successful in what they do. So we need to take a look at understanding eagles. If you know a bald eagles, you always picture them with a white head and a white tail. Well, they don't start off that way. Bald eagles start off pretty much all brown, and then, they get new feathers every year, and those first 5 years, it gets whiter and whiter and whiter until finally, as a 5 or 6 year old, they have a beautiful white head and neck and a white tail. Now, if you see native regalia of any kind with feathers, if you see a white feather with a black tip, people have wrongly misinterpreted this to be, that's a bald eagle tail, because bald eagles have a white tail. I guess they got a little black tip. Not the case whatsoever. Golden eagles have that, their first year of life. So if we look at a golden eagle tail, their first year of life, the tail is white with a black tip. And then as they get older, they get a new molt every year. So by the time a golden eagle is about 5 or 6 years old, their tail is smoky. It's a beautiful brown tail with smoky swirls in it. It's very distinct. But that first year tail is the most accessible, because acquiring an eagle in any way, whether you're trapping an eagle or whether you're climbing to nest and getting an eagle, the most accessible tail feathers of a golden eagle are going to be the first year birds. So 2 reasons. Number one, climbing to a nest and getting a baby is either than trying to jump out of the air and get one, or make a trap where you're hiding underground and maybe, waving a rabbit fur and hoping someone will come down and you grab them. We know some tribes did do that. But also, even if you were going to hunt an eagle, there's an 80% mortality rate of eagles. 80% of golden eagles do not make it to 1 year old. So that means the bulk of eagles that you're going to encounter are going to be young birds that aren't going to make it. And so we see all throughout ancient history, all throughout the western United States, especially the Southwest, the use of golden eagle feathers, the wing feathers, but especially those tail feathers that are white with black tips. We see that being very prominent. And again, we see in the early 1900s that eagles were kept. It is not easy to keep an eagle alive properly. They require fresh food every day. And I've had golden eagles that will, eat a pound and a half of food. And I think about me eating a quarter pounder hamburger and it's like, I'm full. But they can eat that much in a sitting and kind of sit on it for a day. They can eat a lot of food. Fresh meat. You can't be giving them corn, can't be giving them dried corn and things like that. And so this is a difficult bird to keep alive. And if you're Puebloan or Chacoan, you're agrarian. You're not a hunter-gatherer. You're still hunting some, but getting fresh food is not easy. So that means either hunting to get maybe some rabbits, maybe some fresh rabbits, things like that, or it also means maybe sacrificing some of those turkeys you've got. We got to kill a fresh turkey, and a fresh turkey, okay, like maybe if you kill a turkey, like having trained eagles myself, the upkeep for an eagle, if you said, okay, I'm going to kill a turkey and we're going to cook it up, the breast meat for the humans. We're going to cut that up, put it in a clay pot, we're going to cook that up, and we've got these 2 big old turkey legs. We can feed this leg to an eagle one day, and, put this other one in the shade so it'll last a day. It'll be, kind of flies on it and stuff. And then the next day, give that second leg. So really, if you're doing that, and again, maybe you're feeding them the breast meat too, depends on how you do it, right? But that's about what it's going to take to keep a golden eagle alive. That's incredible. I mean, you would be, if you're using your own turkeys that you are raising, you're going to be burning through turkeys fast to keep, I would say, if you just, and again, we don't know about keeping meat cool. Like, you can turn meat into jerky, but a bird can't eat that. A bird needs to eat fresh, raw meat. It cannot eat cooked meat. It cannot eat jerky. So if you have an eagle and you're keeping it at Chaco Canyon, you're trying to keep it alive. If you were to say, well, we're not going to worry about spoilage and the meat going bad, it just kind of will, but whatever, then I think a full turkey, also with the guts, that could be about a week, about 7 to 8 days of meat, for being conservative for an eagle, not fattening the thing up. One whole turkey. And again, you're going to have meat potentially going bad, but maybe if you're keeping it in colder months, maybe that's okay. But that's a lot that you are burning through to keep this eagle alive. We do not have any evidence indicating one way or another that these eagles were kept for any other purpose other than ritual or sacrifice. Those are the only things we seem to see them for. We don't have any evidence that they were eaten. They could have been, but we don't currently have evidence in the archaeological record to suggest that, but it is possible. Chaco was a wild place where very wild things happened, very different things, very new ideas, some of them epic, some of them scary. And so who knows what was going on there with these eagles. But again, the fact that 366 eagle remains were found there. And again, this is over time, but still, that's pretty incredible. Now, what could that have been? Now, if we normally, when we see depictions of Pueblo Bonito specifically, they had this one big giant tree that we've proven archaeologically was kept there, and we don't know if it was just special or it was, hey, we got a cool tree, we don't know. I think it was a ponderosa pine, but big old tree there. But coming into this space, we know that there were many elites. We had incredible elite burials that have been uncovered at Pueblo Bonito with thousands and hundreds of thousands of turquoise beads and some of these. So we know live macaws were kept there too. So this, I picture, it's never depicted this way, but going into these plazas at Pueblo Bonito, I imagine you'd have turkeys, staked down, kind of eating, doing their thing. You might have some macaws. You might have some elite people or some shaman or some wealthy walking around with their macaw, whether holding it or maybe having it, on a perch. When I train my macaws, I use a T-perch to carry them around. So that way if they bite and they're angry, it doesn't matter. They're biting the stick, not your finger. But eagles, picture eagles up top, around the top. These were like 3-4 story tall pueblos on the back side of Pueblo Bonito. And if you had eagles tied, but living up there and people were bringing them food, here you go, here's your food, that's pretty iconic. That, especially for its time, would have been quite visually impactful to go in there and to see that, to see this wealth, to see all these turkeys, to see these huge buildings, 4 stories tall, and then to see potentially eagles lined up around the top. My impression, based off of what I know about eagles and what I have studied in the archaeology in the region as well as in northwestern Mexico, my take is that probably the eagles of Chaco Canyon, the eagles of Pueblo Bonito were probably taken as babies, were probably kept on top, tied on top of the pueblos, and were probably kept alive for probably no more than 6 months, and then were probably sacrificed once you get into the colder months. Now, that is educated assumption, but that is not guaranteed fact, nor can we know guaranteed fact, because the people who lived at Pueblo Bonito are not with us anymore. And some of their ancestors tell very different stories on what occurred there. So going with the archaeology and going with my understanding of eagles, as well as the Pueblo tribes that, in the early 1900s were documented by anthropologists and how they utilized eagles, that is my assumption. So I am putting this out there as a hypothesis that these eagles were taken as babies, and that they were brought to the top of the pueblo, the backside, and where they could overlook and give a visual spectacle. So both spiritually, they're looking over this great house, but also anybody coming in is like, whoa, we got macaws, we got eagles looking over, and we got turkeys. Turkeys are food, but they were still sacred and still powerful. Because again, remember that Mesoamerican influence of turkeys being like a great warrior thing. So that's how I think they were utilized. And I think it's pretty, I think the evidence would suggest that kind of usage. We don't see the medullary bone of adult female eagles or the denser bones of adult males. We don't see that in the femurs on these eagles. So it seems like these are eagles that died or were killed before their first molt, which happens at 1 year of age. So I think it's fascinating. Again, hundreds of eagles being kept at these great houses are never mentioned. I will be doing a video going in depth to the macaws because that requires so much more talking about the husbandry and the upkeep. It is possible that people could have worked with or trained these eagles. But here's another thing I want to bring up. If you raise any bird of prey, any raptor from a baby, it will imprint on you. But the thing is, what happens is once a baby reaches a certain age, it starts to become really aggressive. Right when the feathers hard pan and the blood that was growing the individual feathers retreats back into the body, the blood pressure goes up and they become super aggressive. And the parents will start to bring a wounded prey animal to the nest, and the babies aggressively chase the parent. The parents drop the item and the babies go and catch it. So basically the parents teach the babies how to hunt. And they channel that aggression that's starting to form towards parents towards prey. Well, in falconry, if you are raising a baby bird, if you don't properly shift that aggression at the right age and the right time over to prey, these birds become very aggressive, very violent, and incredibly dangerous. Anything, owls, falcons, hawks, eagles, you name it. If it is a raptor, it will become dangerous and violent. So this is another thing I think. We have no evidence, and there's absolutely no oral tradition among any tribe of anybody training in this Southwest region, training a bird of prey in a falconry type manner. Now, I can see that they could have trained them to fly to you, to do that kind of thing. But again, once they're hard penning, these baby eagles would have become so aggressive, they would have become dangerous. And so I'm putting this out there to any archaeologists or any Native Americans watching this, having trained eagles both the right way and the wrong way in my younger years and understanding how this aggression works. These are people who are living their lives and living their culture in the way they knew. These are not people who knew a history of falconry and say, oh, we're going to do weight management, or we're going to take a rabbit and train this eagle to hunt the rabbit instead of going after my face. It could be, but it's highly unlikely. And so I think it would make sense culturally, and I'm putting this out there, that right around that age when these eagles start to hard pan and start to become adults and start to become incredibly aggressive, because again, if every day somebody's just bringing food to these eagles, hey, I'm climbing up to the top of the pueblo, here's your food, and they're mantling it over, they're making aggressive sounds. That's not a bird that's very conducive to being socially interacted with. So I would suggest, and we have seen this as well in modern Pueblo tribes that have killed eagles at a certain age. It really is right around that 6, 7, 8 month mark. It's when they're normally sacrificed in these historical records that we have on these Pueblos that were photographed and documented in the early 1900s. It would make sense in the same way that if these birds were ritually killed or killed for any reason, that would be around the age it would happen. So I'm putting this out there because, again, I don't know of any archaeologist who has trained multiple eagles. So I want to share this information out there to give this insight. And I was hoping that anybody watching this video would be more informed of the fact that not only did these Chacoan great houses contain macaws, but that they also contained hundreds of eagles over the years. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. I will be doing I'll be doing multiple videos on Chaco Canyon specifically, going in depth. I'm going to be visiting there this fall. I've been there several times, but I'm going to go in depth and film it right. I'm also working on an epic video going into specifically the macaws and the macaw trade in the American Southwest that happened in these ancient times. So be watching for those to come, but I wanted to highlight eagles in this video. So I hope you enjoyed learning. I would love to know your perspectives, your thoughts, what you've heard, what you have learned, and I would love to hear your comments down below. But until then, always remember that life is a gift. So never stop learning and never stop exploring. We'll see you next time.